Hello and welcome to the Socially Numb Podcast. I am your host, Richie Leahy. We're back at it again, and this time I'm finally finishing up the Science Olympiad pictures. So, the Science Olympiad last week, I talked about the egg drop experiment. Well, finally, all of these other experiments added into one final competition. And I kind of touched on it last week. It's a ruse, kind of. The parents and teachers make these science fair projects because they want their school to win. It gives them I don't know if it gives them actually grant money, but you can tell that schools do this whenever everyone's entry looks the same. So we talked about the rockets before. The rockets was one of the ones that we did at school, and I let the kids figure it out themselves. So when they were ready to bring me a final product, it wasn't that good. Well, of course not. These are like 10, 12-year-old kids trying to build a rocket that stays, I think it was in the air. It has to float or distance. I forget how they measured it. But we had a couple different entries from our team, and we picked the best one. We took it there. Well, they had ones at the actual competition that had full-on parachutes, airbags, extra gliders that popped out, and there's no way a 10 or 12-year-old would pick that out and make that themselves. So we talked to the other teachers, and they were like, oh no, we saw this on YouTube, or it's in the Science Olympiad website as an example of a past winner from high school. Where it's like, well, did you give the kids the instructions on how to make it? No, we just made it, and the kids helped. Well, the kids are the ones doing the competition. So to me, that doesn't do anything. That doesn't help anyone. But that's how the competition went. Our guys didn't do too bad. They actually did pretty good. But it was disheartening to look around and see, all right, well, that one was made by a teacher. You could point them out. That one was made by a teacher. That one definitely was made by a teacher or a parent. And watch the kids. They would, there were some so there was a car one too. We did, I talked about the friction car experiment. Well, they had another one that was similar. It was like a ramp, and the car had to glide, I think, which is part of the friction. The kids learn how to do the friction, and then they'll know how to make the car go faster. Well, there was one that there was I don't know if it was exactly ball bearings. I don't think ball bearings were actually accepted because that's just a part you buy and then the cars go forever. But there was some kind of brake lock mechanism. Maybe there might have been a couple different categories. I'm trying to think of which ones maybe it was one that our kids didn't compete in. There was one where a car had to go so far and then stop. Well, the kid had to call over his dad. I think it was his dad or a teacher, because he didn't know how to enable the braking mechanism. And to me, that's unfair to the other kids. Whenever you have a kid who has to call over a parent and say, hey, can you set this up for me because I don't know how we do it? That means that they didn't actually go ahead and create that. So it's kind of unfair to the other kids, the ones that did do it themselves. But I have a couple pictures, just a handful. I think there's 3 of the events that I participated in. Well, I didn't participate in, but I was coach of, which was the rockets, the car, and then there was one other one. I can't remember off the top of my head. But those pictures will be going up, and that's the next one that can go ahead, and that'll be the end of that. So the Science Olympiad pictures are now over for my projects. So the next thing that I'm going to talk about is a little bit about the website. So this episode might be a little bit posted late because I'm hosting for free on GitHub, and I usually build my website right before I release it. Well, there was some updates, and to me, there's no good deployed system for updates yet. So I got an error on mine, and I've been building it the same way. All I'm doing is adding new podcast episodes as I move over stories, but the stories wouldn't cause anything to be built. Apparently it was because of a name in my 404 page. They changed everything to strict, so the name is a number. They thought it was a string, or no, they didn't know if it was a string or an integer, which is an integer is a number, and it gave me an error on my build, which goes ahead and makes the site not work. So, of course, I couldn't do any updates, and I had to call for help and see, because I wasn't getting any error logs. So the way deployments work, when there's an update, normally there's like a release notes to show you, okay, this happens. Well, I couldn't figure that out. I couldn't find it. So I had to ask for help, because I went into their error logs. The error log is another way to see. It will tell you, like, okay, well, this is broke. So I had to reach out for help, asked them if they had the error logs, they could share it with me, because I'm not seeing anything on my end, and I didn't know that there's an update. Well, apparently there's a new package, and this new package allows you to see the build errors in part. It's made by GitHub, where I host my site, and like I said, it's a free hosting, so I can't knock it. It's perfect for blogs that are lightweight, like mine. Mainly hosting. Now, I don't host the audio files there. I have to put those on Amazon Bucket, which, like I said in the past, I can tell whenever we have good episodes, because then the download numbers come, and they actually go ahead and will be charged more based on how many downloads. So whenever we have a particularly good episode, then I have to pay for those episodes to be downloaded, which isn't a bad system whenever you look at it in the grand scheme of things. You only have to pay. It's free for the first year. I'm not sure when my year's up. But after that, then you have to pay. It could be pennies if we don't get any downloads. If there's a good hit, could be a couple bucks. I mean, I don't think would hit enough that it would be $100 or so. But if it did, then we could just switch hosting. So in the meantime, and this is going to be just a little bit more about website stuff. So in the meantime, I've been looking into, right now and this is going to go off topic. So if you remember, if you listened to the show before, we had a sports segment that we spun off into a website called Southbound Sports. Now, Southbound Sports it took an idea that I had for local news, because here in Raleigh, North Carolina, they don't have, like, news channels always flip-flop, it seems, and the news isn't as, I don't know, what I'm used to. I guess because in Pennsylvania, when I lived there, we had Pittsburgh news, and Pittsburgh just seemed to be more local, more everything, like, kind of pertained to the area. And then there was Central PA news, which was even more local and more pinpointed. Well, the news down here, Raleigh covers basically the whole East Coast. So you can see a bunch of stories that don't pertain or don't mean anything to you, and that's what you're looking at all day. So you go ahead, and I'm used to some, like, just a point of it where it's like, okay, I want the news here, I want to see local teams or whatever, and it's like covering miles away, places I've never been to or heard of. So my idea was to have a site that kind of aggregated news based on, it didn't always have to be social media sites or anything, but just pinpointed different sources. Now, when I started it, I thought Raleigh had a bunch of independent, like, newspapers and stuff covering it, but it looks like they all kind of got bought up, and that's probably why there's only one main news source. And even though there's a couple different channels that you can get the same news, kind of like conflicting viewpoints, it doesn't matter, because they've all similarly bought up all of the smaller stations and all the smaller independent newspapers. So there was one other guy looked like had the same idea that I had, like, okay, well, let's get a nice independent newspaper source or an aggregate feed, and his lasted maybe 3 months. So I kind of switched, took that idea to sports. It's something that I'm passionate about, and I figured I could get some good statistics out of it. So I'm looking at the statistics, and I'm giving it a rundown, and overall, it's not too bad. Had a lot of ideas and a lot of views and a lot of traffic. I mean, there was one story I posted, and it was almost 4,000 views. Then another one, and this is immediate. This was before we even had like any social media. My cousin, he's helping out. He posted one similar views. I think his actually had more, maybe 5,000, 6,000 immediately. And this is, we launched in January, and of course, that's a big football, and that's where our favorite sport is. So we launch in January with the new year, start doing a podcast, similar, like a spinoff of Socially Numb, where it's only sports, and I cut the sports out of this one. And it took off pretty well. So that took off, and I wanted to bring back the idea of that aggregate source, because we're covering mainly Pittsburgh sports. That's where I grew up, outside of Pittsburgh, and that's where my family had season tickets to some of the sports teams there. Pittsburgh Steelers, not my immediate family, but enough that we could go basically whenever we would want. And then we had the Pittsburgh Pirates we went to a lot. Not so much the Pittsburgh Penguins. We did have a local minor league team that we would go to instead. But other than that, those are the teams that I'm used to covering. So I'm used to the news sources for them. Well, the internet has kind of split everything up so that now you have a couple different sources all covering the same teams, all in different locations. So what I wanted to do was try to get that aggregate source out. So I signed up for a DigitalOcean droplet. Now, the droplet has been working pretty good. It was pretty easy to get set up. I've done Ubuntu servers for a long time. I taught it at a tech school to adult learners, so I'm pretty familiar with setting up a server. And setting up that server is something that is very easy for me to do, but it's almost pretty immediate, and they have some decent guides, but actually deploying it was fairly simple. Now with that, a lot of new technology comes out, and that's what kind of scares me, is you have newer technology. So if I set this up in basically just a WordPress to hold my theme, which is what I'm thinking of doing, and then doing some aggregate stuff, just writing some scripts to pull in some stuff and posting them, just the headlines or maybe even a teaser, just kind of like your one-stop shop. You come to our site, you're going to get the best of Pittsburgh sports. And that's what I'm looking to do and set up. So the DigitalOcean droplet that I wanted to talk about, it's fairly easy to set up. I don't know how the billing works though. If they bill you up front or if they bill you after usage, which I'm assuming they do. It's kind of like probably Amazon, where I set it up, and if I only use it for a day or two, I can just delete it and get paid. I think it's less than a cent an hour. So I'd have to keep it up for a couple days to accrue the cost. Now, with that, their RAM and stuff varies based on the server. So it's interesting for me to see if this first install can hold multiple sites, or if I would have to buy multiple droplets. I do know that some of them, they always recommend a higher one. GoDaddy did that too. Back in the day, I would host on GoDaddy. They would keep telling me that I would need more RAM and my server would run faster. Sometimes, like if I had a good month doing freelance work, I'd buy that more RAM and my server would still be slow. So I don't think that really affects it. Maybe once it's in there, but I mean, maybe it affects people around the world. I don't know. But it's interesting to see, to me, what's going to happen with this droplet over time. Is it going to be easy for me to maintain because I'm actually accessing the server? There's no cPanel that controls everything for me, at least as far as I know. So it's a little bit more bare bones, but setting it up was fairly simple. And I have some other projects, but I want to try to get that working. And like I said, I wanted to see how easy it is to set up, and I wanted to kind of see what kind of process it took to get that up and running. So that's what I've been working on, and the DigitalOcean dropped, but I'll probably check back in on that. But with that and the GitHub, I now have 2 hosting sources. One's paid, one's free, plus the Amazon stuff. Well, I've talked about the other podcast that I did before, Dad Strength. I started with this. That podcast is going to end soon, or it's basically in the process of ending. And I have to find out just different hosting sources and long term. Long term, I don't want to pay, I don't think, for Amazon S3 on the terms of someone downloading it or something happens to me. I'd rather have it archived for all time, just in case, if something happens to me and then I have to pay for a server that I'm not alive or something. And I'd rather try to keep it for all time. So I'm looking into getting a hosting through who's the guys that do Wayback Machine. I might have mentioned it before on this show, or maybe I did on the Dad Strength show. I can't remember which one. But that's where I'm going to host the show. Hopefully it's for free for all time. I know once you put it up there, you really can't change it. But I'm pretty sure those episodes are in their final stays. I'm going to give them one more listen to myself. There's ended up being 50 of them. I do have one more that I put at the beginning that I'm going to fix up the show notes for that, get it going on richieleahy.com like I am for this show, and kind of archive it. And so if this show, especially now, moves over to YouTube, which it's looking like it's going to, but I want to do a whole year first, 52 episodes, then it is going to be able to be downloaded. It is going to be archived. Most of the new content is going to be on the Southbound Sports Show, which we do live on Periscope, and I'm going to try to do some other live, like pregame shows and stuff on there to try to get viewers in, pull them in, and keep a consistent product and hopefully a quality product. So that's my idea, something that I want to keep running. And if this show goes away, like I said, I want people to know that you can still download it. But if you want the newest from me, subscribe to my YouTube and go ahead and get on Southbound Sports. Follow us. If you're not in the sports, most of my tech stuff is going to go on YouTube. I've been looking into getting some videos. I had one video that gets more downloads or more views than my downloads a month for this show. So if I did and I know not all videos are going to be like that, but apparently people are looking for the tech topics. So possibly if I do a couple of videos a month, then I'll be able to pass up my downloads by far. But it will depend because the podcast downloads are finicky. A couple thousand here, a couple thousand a month there within the past 30 days or whatever. If I'm getting 2,000 downloads, 3,000 downloads, I mean, I could stay the course, go about a full year and try to hit, or another couple years and try to hit 1 million downloads. But to me, that's something that you're looking at very, very small, time consuming unless the fan base grows. And like I said before, this show is kind of in the middle grounds here now, where it's caught between worlds. It doesn't really fit categorized in any part, and that's where it kind of lost its appeal. Not for me, but just overall, I think the listeners go down and up so fast that it's very hard to get that in place consistently whenever I'm changing topics and I'm changing the show. But it did work out well, considering it was my first show that I ever did. And we'll just keep going, try to get to a year, see what happens. Like I said, it's most likely going to be switched to a YouTube show. I've mentioned that before. Now, going up into video games. So I've been playing video games lately a good bit, trying to get back into it. But I found myself playing 3DS, the Nintendo 3DS. I've talked about it at the start of this show. I went and got one Black Friday, or I think it was actually Thanksgiving, but it was considered the Black Friday sale. Of course, on Thanksgiving, during Thanksgiving dinner, they start their sale. And I go all the way over to Walmart, and I get this 3DS for $100. I think it was on sale for $100. Normally $200 for the actual 3DS because it's a bigger one. This was a smaller one. Well, they stopped making this small one. And I think it's perfect because it fits in my pocket. I don't think the bigger one would fit in my pocket. The Nintendo Switch doesn't fit in my pocket. So for me, I guess, well, the Nintendo Switch, I guess if I took the handles off, but I have a case for it. So like for me to carry it around, like I need a backpack. The 3DS is perfect. I could throw it in my pocket. We go to the store, we do something. I'm out with family, I'm out with friends. They're taking a break. I can pop open the screen. It saves my spot just like the Nintendo Switch does, which I guess they perfected with this. You just shut the clamshell and it goes into sleep mode. I open it back up and I'm right where I am. If I'm not in a save point for the game, then I have to have the game going. Now, I'll be honest, you do have to charge it that way. So I will have to charge it every couple hours. I guess it's not hours, but every couple days, every day or so, I have to charge it so it's fully charged. Otherwise, it might die during the night or something, and I don't want to lose my spot. So I have to keep an eye on it if I am doing sleep mode. But most likely, most games, you can get a save spot on the 3DS within 30 minutes. So I've been playing my Zelda games, trying to get caught up. Now, I love the Zelda series, and some of the games on the handhelds I just haven't played. Well, there's a good bit on the DS and 3DS that I haven't played. So I picked them all up, got all of them, and I've been playing them a little bit at a time. I even included some of the offshoots like Hyrule Warriors. And I'm trying to get the Picross version of the Zelda game that they have. And I'm counting that in the canon, even though it's just pictures. So I'm going to go ahead and beat that game too. But overall, I want to have all the Zelda games beat. It's my number one game series. It's the only game series, I think, that I would honestly purchase a console for. I've been thinking about this a lot lately. And I don't know anymore if I would, after Breath of the Wild and the Nintendo Switch. If Nintendo decides that they want to do another portable handheld, I mean, they did the 2DS, which is like a 2D version of the 3DS that they canceled. They're making a 2DS version, which I mainly play in 2D just because I don't want my kid coming around, and they're not supposed to see 3D images until they're older. So I definitely don't want them to see 3D. And I mean, I guess I've always seen 3D as kind of a gimmick. So the 2DS would have been perfect for me. They had one when I got this 3DS for cheaper, but it wasn't a clamshell model, like it didn't close and protect the screen, which is a must-have with kids, I feel. Now, the other one was marketed for kids, which I feel like if you throw in a bag, maybe put a rubber case around the outside, it would have been pretty heavy duty. But for me, an adult, nah, that's not going to work out for me. So the 3D model it was, folding over, putting it in my pocket. I wanted the smaller one for that reason. I don't want to carry around a big thing. I already have enough big devices in my bag. I already have a big laptop. I don't even like a big laptop. But that's what I have, and I have to carry these around. Now, as I've been playing Zelda, I've started to dabble in the 3D feature on the 3DS. So this may be kind of a surprise, but since I got the 3DS, I put the child lock stuff on so that it wouldn't play unless you entered a code in 3D. I did that because I have a daughter, and if you listen to Dad's Strength, you know the setting is only used for adults. If you use it with kids, it could cause them to go cross-eyed or have trouble seeing. So you're not supposed to use it if they're under a certain age. I don't know that age off the top of my head. I could guess, but I don't want people hearing this and not looking it up and then going by what I say and having something happen to their kids. Obviously, the older, the better for them to see in 3D. And so I have that turned off. So the first couple Zelda games I've beaten, well, okay, so on there, I had to get Oracle of Seasons and Oracle of Ages. So I started to play through those. They don't have 3D because they're from the old Game Boy Advance. At least I don't think they do. So it wasn't until I picked up Hyrule Warriors and A Link Between Worlds that I'm actually using the 3D feature or having it available. Now, I haven't used it with Hyrule Warriors because I know how that game works. It's a spin-off of Dynasty Warriors, and I thought that if I played in 3D, it might have trouble rendering enemies just because of what the chip is in the 3DS and stuff. So I'm going to test it out because I started to play it with A Link Between Worlds, and so far I love the game. I haven't beaten it yet, so I'm not fully going to talk about it, possibly next week, but I probably won't even beat it then because I've been going back and forth between Hyrule Warriors and Link Between Worlds. So I've beaten the first 3, I guess they're dungeons. They're pretty quick. It's a nice game to pick up and play. Oracle of Seasons I think I brought in because I beat that game. That game was more of a trial and error game because if you didn't know, you had to go back and forth and change the season. So if I'm looking for like a key in water and it's winter, I'd have to change it to spring. Maybe the key would be in there, maybe not. Maybe it only shows up in summer or fall. So I had to go through and change seasons and look around. So that game took a very long time for me to beat because, again, I'm playing Zelda. I don't like to look at the walkthroughs or the cheats or anything. I just like to play and explore. So those games to me, while they were executed great, they weren't as classic as a typical Zelda game for me. And maybe others thought that they were, but it was more of a redundancy. Okay, kill the guy, try to find a stump, try to change the season. Now, I haven't got that far into Oracle of Ages because I wanted a break from that. To me, I know they were... So if you're not familiar with the Zelda lore, when Oracle of Seasons and Oracle of Ages came out, there were actually supposed to be 3 games. And each game you could play in any order, and each game had their own gimmick. Well, Oracle of Seasons, you had to change the season. And of course, that changed the environment. Some of the lakes would be frozen over. There was snow you could put down. You could shovel snow to move and find some of the caves and stuff. And of course, they had it built up so that based on which season you were exploring in, you could find stuff. So for me, exploring, you had to explore basically 4 times, which I guess isn't bad. I mean, it took me months. So like whenever I beat that a couple months ago, it took me about half a year, and that was playing on and off. I didn't play every day or like every week even, but that's how long it took me because sometimes I would get stuck, and normally if I take a break and come back, then I get unstuck. So it was just a long game, and it didn't make me want to play Oracle of Ages. I assume there's another gimmick where you go old and small, much like Ocarina of Time, but that game didn't introduce that until later, and you really didn't have to go back and forth a bunch of times just to solve puzzles. So you could play in modern time, or in whenever he's an adult, like in whatever, I guess it's not really modern times, but play him as an adult and then go back in time and play him as a child. So that's how Oracle of Ages or Seasons, or Ocarina of Time worked. So if Ocarina of Time can pull it off, I have hopes that maybe Oracle of Ages is the better game, and there's only 2 ages instead of 4. I have a feeling, though, it's going to be more of a gimmick, and there's going to be a couple ages I have to seek through to find the keys to my puzzle. Now, Hyrule Warriors, pretty straightforward game. Again, I'm not going to get into it too much. The reason I brought up the 3D thing is because Nintendo, they quit making the 3DS. I think I mentioned it earlier in this podcast. I hope I did. But the 3DS model that I got, the small one that I got on Black Friday last year, or Thanksgiving, whatever they call it, they quit making it. And I haven't even seen one in stock, to be honest. And they were supposed to have removable face plates for it, which, I mean, it does. But they were supposed to sell them. I've never seen one in stock in any store. I've never seen that model 3DS. I haven't even seen a 3DS in stock, to be honest, since that day. Like, it's hard to find one. I've been at the store where guys were like, hey, do you have a 3DS? And we don't care which one. We will take the 3D XL, the big one. And the guy's like, no, all we have are these 2DS. So the 2DS model they made, I mentioned it, was not a clamshell model. Like, it didn't have a closing lid. So what its point was, it was only in 2DS, or 2D. It was only in 2D, the game. So even you could play 3D games on it, but they would only render in 2D. And it was made for kids. So it was 2 screens. It was supposed to be durable. They could hold it in their hands. It was bigger. And I think I did pick one up at the store, and it did feel good in my hands. But it's just kind of like a kid's tablet. I think all kids' tablets feel good in adults' hands because they're thicker. We're used to like the thin phones. They try to make them as thin as possible so they bust in your pocket and you have to buy a new one. That seems to be the route that they try to go. Well, the 2DS didn't do that. It was a big, heavy, actually it wasn't really that heavy, but it was a big, solid piece of equipment that a kid could pick up. And if it dropped, hopefully there's enough padding inside with the components that it wouldn't break. And actually, I think they are pretty durable. I've seen a couple of complaints because I did look them up before I did this show. Now, Nintendo, it looks like they're getting rid of those. So they quit making them. I'm pretty sure that I could be wrong. And because I haven't seen them in store lately. And they definitely quit making the 3DS, the smaller models, which I think are the better models because like I said before, you can put them in your pocket. You throw a 3DS in your pocket and you can play anywhere. I can't do that with the Switch. I have to carry a bag. And that's not a bad thing. I mean, the Switch has a better screen, let's be honest, 100 times over. And I could see myself wanting to play Link Between Worlds again. And there were a couple other Zelda games that I'm trying to play on there. There are 2 other ones, Phantom Hourglass and Spirit Tracks, which, oh man, I'll bring it. Phantom Hourglass really pisses me off. So I've been going back and forth between all these games and just trying to see. I haven't had a set. These are all the handheld ones that I have never beaten. And they're mostly modern Zeldas. But some of them have features like blow into the mic. I blew into the stupid mic 100 times and I couldn't get the sand off the map in Phantom Hourglass. But I'll leave that for another day. That's just more recent because that one you use a stylus. That's more laid back. It hasn't gripped me in. Like I haven't sat down and wanted to play it. If I pull out the 3DS, the game I wanted to play has been Hyrule Warriors or A Link Between Worlds. That's the game I've been playing mostly. I beat Hyrule Warriors up through, I didn't beat the bonus levels yet. So maybe by the time I record the second one, I'll beat him. But I just don't foresee that because I want to play A Link Between Worlds. So that's where I'm at right now. And to me, that just seems to be the most fun I can have. It's a little bit different. It's kind of like, okay, so there are 2 parts. I don't want to say it's a gimmick because it's pretty fun. You can turn yourself into a painting and sneak in walls, and it's about 2 worlds that are merging together. And so you have the original 3 dungeons in the regular Hyrule. Then there's another land that you can sneak through the cracks and go through like warp dimensions and show up, and it's basically the evil form of Hyrule called Lurol or something like that. I don't know what the name is. And that's where the other 7 dungeons are. So I've started to play through those. I've beaten the Hyrule one so far. Haven't got to play Ganon yet. I've recovered. I do like the fact, so this is a change up that I when I bring it up in the full game, I'll talk about again probably. But you can buy weapons or you can rent them from the store. Well, if you go through and you're playing the game and you're making a conscious effort to collect the coins while you're playing, I get 1,000 coins pretty easy in this game. Then I go back and I rented all of the weapons, and it's been awesome. I haven't had to go through and try to find, okay, well, obviously I found the wrong dungeon, because some of the Zelda games, if you go, you can play different dungeons in different orders. Well, if you don't do them in the right order, you might miss a boomerang. So the next dungeon might be a tad more difficult because you could have had the boomerang if you played them in order. So there are some that you can play out of order in the older Zelda games that make it a pain because you don't get all the goods. Well, on this one, they're just like, okay, rent them. And I don't know if you can unlock them for good without renting them, because if you die, I think you lose all your stock. I just haven't died. So maybe that's why I like this game more, because I'm having more fun and I haven't been dying. Not to say I died a lot in Oracle of Seasons, it was just more of, okay, where do I need to go? Where was I? I thought I boxed this guy, and then it just confused me. So maybe it was just too much of a gimmick for me. I don't know. Some people love that game, some people don't. I'm in the ones that I'm lukewarm on it. It was a good game, and would I play it again? I might play it again, and it might be easier the next time around because I know exactly what I'm doing, and I'll remember some of the puzzles, and that's how Ocarina of Time was. I beat that game a bunch of times. The first time through was hard. I was a kid. That came out when I was like 7 or 8, so I'm pretty sure I could have been older than that. I could have been younger than that. I don't know. So I remember it took me a while to beat that game. It took me a while to beat Mario 64. Now when I play it, I'm like, wow, this game's a lot easier than I remember. But it's also because I remember how to beat some of the maps. Okay, well, there's a hidden star here. How would I know that if I hadn't beat the game the first time? So that's where it kind of comes around, and I've been playing that. And I'm kind of sad that they're getting rid of the 3D. I've never used it before. It is kind of cool. It does glitches on me sometimes where like the screen will shake. I think it might be due to me moving around, because like I can't sit still for a long time. My arms will go numb, or like if I'm propped up, because maybe the bigger model would have been better for my shoulders. So I always like reverse. I'm sitting, then I'm laying down on my belly and doing stuff like that to play. When I do that, the game kind of shifts around before centering, and then I can see the screen again. It's kind of a pain if I have to like turn my head and crack my neck or itch something while I'm fighting a boss, because I had that happen. And then I lose 2 hearts because the 3DS like messes up, and then I can't see where I am, because it's like, so what happens is it blurs the screen. It'll go, and maybe that's just me. Maybe if I sat still or took a break after 5-10 minutes, which they recommend in that game, it always tells you, hey, you need to take a break. So that's what I've been doing. I'm kind of surprised Nintendo went to the 2DS. I wonder if it's because kids have been having their vision get hurt, or people just aren't buying them anymore, and they think that maybe people will come in and play games. I would like to see the virtual console purchases for the 3DS come to the Nintendo Switch. Maybe that's what they're gearing up for, and maybe that's why they pushed it back. They made this announcement for the 2DS. They're doing one more hurrah here right before Christmas. They were supposed to announce the Nintendo Switch Online this year. They were going to push it back to 2018, I think. So maybe they're going to try to get one more Christmas run out of the 2DS before they tell people like, hey, and I know some people are going to be pissed if they do this, where they're going to go ahead, and if you have digital purchases on the 3DS, you're going to be able to download them on the Nintendo Switch. That's my feeling, because I think with the 2DS, that's going to give Nintendo extra incentive to make sure that these 3D games play well on the 2D screen. Then the Nintendo Switch screen is by far big enough to house dual screens. If they really wanted to do it, they could have one screen on the left, one on the right. They could also give you different, so I think the Wii played some DS games, or Wii U, and they gave you some different configuration options that I've seen, where it's like one screen, then the other one kind of overlays the other one, kind of like the map. I'm not sure. I know that the Switch has touchscreen. It's not as responsive as what the 3DS one is. A lot of the 3DS you had to use a stylus for, though. So you have to use the bigger rubbery stylus on the Nintendo Switch because it's a different type of screen, kind of like your cell phone. Well, maybe that won't be too bad because the screen will be bigger. But how much bigger? I don't know. I just think that that's what they're going to do. They're going to go ahead and try to sucker people in. The stock's been going up and down, up and down, up and down. I try to watch that because that's usually a decision maker where they're like, okay, we have to do something to sucker people in. The Switch was great, and it's still sold out. I've never seen one in stock. So I'm glad I pre-ordered mine because I do play it Mario Kart mainly. That's why I haven't been bringing it in, because it takes me a while to beat Mario Kart. But I'm glad that they had Mario Kart and Zelda as release games, because those are games that will take me, a casual gamer, even though I do this podcast, so it makes it seem like a game all the time. It gives me months of game time. I was going to get Splatoon. I don't know if I talked about this, but they don't have the couch co-op. That annoys me. So I was really close to getting it. I got ARMS, which I haven't played too much. I don't want to say it didn't feel right. I didn't return it. But actually, I've been doing digital downloads. I don't even know if you can return those. But it's been fun. And the mechanics and everything is great. It just takes a while to get into, and I'm used to regular fighting games. Maybe it's fun. If my kid was a little bit older and we could box each other on the TV, I'm sure we'd have a blast, which is kind of why I got it. I figured I might as well play it full price and get it now instead of waiting for like a digital sale, because that might never come. I did get Snake Pass on digital sale. I started to play that. The controls are difficult to the point of being extreme. Like, there's no reason. It makes me want to play in easy mode, but I haven't tested that out yet. And I've seen other people say the same thing online. It's not, the controls are kind of, they're too difficult, and they're not as responsive as what they could be. So it makes the game more difficult whenever you're trying to climb up and down things, because they don't really work right. Maybe if I put some time in, I could master them. I'm sure I could. So I'm down debating if I should do that or not. The other game I was going to pick up was Sonic Mania. I've kind of slowed down on the Switch games because I was getting one a month when it first came out. That's why I got so many. I have like the first couple months I bought a game. This month would be Sonic Mania because last month I got Snake Pass. So I had Zelda, Mario Kart, Zelda, then I got Shovel Knight, which is 3 games in one, but it plays as long as one game. Then I got Mario Kart May. Then June I got ARMS. July I got Snake Pass. So I have 6 games or 5-6 games right now. I think I have 5. And the next game I was going to get is Sonic Mania. Well, I was going to get Splatoon in August here, but they seem to have these big events, and I can never play the big events. I'm always away doing something, and I don't like that. It's like they're forcing you to play at a certain time. I'm sure the game's great, but every time they had a demo, or they're like, you can play for this many hours, I was out of town. So I couldn't play because you need the internet. Next, the week story mode. And for me, I like to play the Switch when you're not online. Zelda works for that. Mario Kart works for that. Snake Pass works for that. ARMS works for that, I believe. I haven't got too much into it. Oh, I also got Snipper Clips. So I guess I do have 6 games. I knew I had 6. Snipper Clips was more of a launch game, though. Because that was another game to fill out my thing. So I guess I could take a month off if I was honestly trying to get 1 game a month to beat. And some of these are like small digital games, which I assume I'm going to start to go to. Maybe like some Super Nintendo games I've never played because I never had a Super Nintendo. I only played, like, I seeked out Zelda and stuff to beat. But I don't know. Splatoon just didn't do it for me. Maybe if they had more of a single player campaign, or they could have did what Doom did and had challenges. And I know that's much harder and they don't have the infrastructure for that set up because Nintendo never invested, where you get the server and have people create levels with bad guys, and then you have them create your single player campaign so that there are maps I could download and play. Maybe they'll introduce that. I've heard they're supposed to give free downloadable content, but to me, free downloadable content isn't a new splash gun. It's not another character to play. Like, that's not a reason for me to even boot up the game to download that. So hopefully that comes. That's a game I could pick up later. I would like to play it. It's one of Nintendo's biggest properties, it looks like. The other game that I'm waiting for is Metroid Prime. Man, if that comes out, I'll be pumped. That would make me forget all about Splatoon. It's probably single player only, which is fine with me. Because like I said, I like to switch playing wherever. And then I'm sure they'll get a multiplayer shooter that's more dedicated, whether it be Call of Duty or something. The other developers are probably waiting to see how much it continues to sell. Where I'm not interested in the new Xbox or the new PlayStation. I'm not interested in buying ultra high definition 4K DVD movies or whatever they are. They're not DVDs. They're full ultra high def discs that are taking Blu-rays, and now you can't really find Blu-rays. And I've been getting stuff just on Vudu, which to me is fine. And net neutrality is still safe right now. So it's not like I have to pay extra to watch movies, which I'm sure will happen, and then everyone will just start illegally downloading movies. And I'm sure that your internet provider, whenever they're doing the net neutrality stuff, that's what they're talking about. They're going to try to shut down that avenue where you can't torrent anymore. So I won't be able to download Ubuntu operating system discs in 1 second. I'll have to download them through a regular download and have it fail 100 times. But I think that's it for this week. I guess I really didn't stay on topic for anything. It's talking mainly about video games and what I had and stuff. But I'm not sure. I'll probably label this about the new Nintendo 2DS. To me, I think that is going to be a transition into the Switch as their only console. And I don't have any stats on this or seen any press releases to back it up. That is just my feeling. So that's it. Thank you for listening. I'm your host, Richie Leahy. Follow me on Twitter, and I'll see you next week.